What is up, guys? We're back with another video, and today we're checking out this graphics card right here. This is ASUS's ROG Astral RTX 5080. Now, the questions that we have is that one, is this the best RTX 5080 that's out there right now? And two, is it actually worth the extra money? So let's go ahead and take a look. So let's talk about the Astral series and where it actually sits in ASUS's product stack. So now Astral is going to be the flagship graphics card, or at the top of the product stack when it comes to ASUS's graphics cards. Previously, that was always Strix. Strix was always the top end card, but that didn't line up with the rest of ASUS's products. So if you think about motherboards, there was always a Strix motherboard, and then above Strix was always Maximus on the Intel side, and then Crosshair on the AMD side. And with graphics cards, it was just out of whack. So they wanted to really switch that around and have a top of the line, the Astral's the top, and that's what you get. And again, it's across all of the lines. So ROG sits here, and then there's always something that sits above. So for graphics cards, that is now going to be Astral. This is going to be a factory overclock card as well. So ASUS has increased the power limit up to 400 watts. On top of that, the GPU boost is increased. So on the stock RTX 5080, it's going to be 2,617 megahertz. But on this card, it's going to be 2,760 megahertz. As we take a first look at the card here, you can see that it definitely has a more sleek and sophisticated look, especially compared to something like an ROG Strix card. ROG Strix is going to be more flashy and more RGB. This, like I said, is going to be more sleek and sophisticated, and I definitely like that look. Now, this is a big card. It's probably going to be one of the biggest RTX 5080s out there. I'll go ahead and put the official dimensions up on the screen like I always do. The card is going to be quite heavy as well, and this has a lot to do with the actual shroud itself, as it's made of metal. This is actually an entire CNC machine piece, which is really impressive. The outer part of the shroud is black, with the inner part being a dark gray or gunmetal color. I think ASUS really pulls off the sleek look here. Mounted in the shroud itself are our 3 cooling fans. These are ASUS's Axial Tech fans, which are designed with the blades actually connecting to an outer frame that spins with the fan. The center fan actually will spin in the opposite direction of the 2 outer fans. On each fan, you'll find an ASUS ROG logo. Looking at the card from the side, we can see just how thick it is and the massive heatsink that sits on top of the GPU. One thing I did notice about the heatsink is that it is coated black. Even on the previous Strix, we didn't see that, and it really changes the overall look of the card for the better. ASUS is making use of a vapor chamber base and 8 heat pipes that extend into the heatsink itself. If you're wondering about what's under the hood, ASUS is making use of 80 amp MOSFETs, which provide 35% more headroom than the standard design. The side of the card that will show if you have a case window has a small ROG eye and says GeForce RTX, while it also says Republic of Gamers a bit smaller. Also on this side of the card, you'll find your 12VH PWR power connection and 2 4-pin fan headers. What's nice is that ASUS has covered these if you don't plan on using them. One thing that isn't noticeable right off the bat when it comes to the 12VH PWR power connection is that ASUS has installed a thermal pad right on it essentially. This is going to cut down on thermal soak, and of course we know all of the issues that have been discovered with this 12VH PWR power connection, melted cables and all of that. So a lot of heat is being generated here, so having the extra thermal pad definitely helps. On top of that, with ASUS's GPU Tweak 3 software, it's actually going to let you know if you have the cable plugged in correctly, which is definitely nice. And then even on top of that, you're going to get a live readout of how much power is coming into each pin on this connector, which definitely gives you peace of mind. Also, talking about the GPU Tweak software and what ASUS has going on under the hood, there's actually 5 temperature sensors on this card. So you're going to be able to measure not only your GPU temperature, but your memory temperature, your VRM temperatures, and even the temperature at the 12V PWR power connection. If you connect your case fans to the two fan headers, it allows you to have a fan curve that's based on both the CPU and GPU as opposed to just the CPU. Right next to the fan headers is a small switch. This switch is for the BIOS, and you can select between performance and quiet mode. These are simply fan curves, and by default, the card will ship in performance mode. Another really cool thing going on under the hood is that ASUS has added a protective PCB coating. This is going to protect against short circuits caused by moisture, dust, and debris. We've seen this on things like mice with holes in them, and it's great to see it here on a graphics card. Flipping the card over to the back, we have a full coverage metal backplate that simply says Astral in the center. The big change here is at the end, we have a fourth axial tech fan. ASUS tells us that the fourth fan creates a powerful vertical airflow channel that boosts air pressure by up to 20%. When it comes to connections on the card, there are 3 DisplayPort 2.1B and 2 HDMI 2.1B. This is one of the few RTX 5080s that actually comes with 2 HDMI ports. We can see that this card is slotted for 2 slots, but keep in mind that it is definitely thicker at 3.8 slots. When it comes to RGB lighting, there's simply a light bar that goes across the top edge of the card. Now this can be seen from the side of the card if you have this installed in your case, but you can also see it from under the card where the shroud is. Now this is a more sleek and sophisticated look, and I think ASUS definitely pulls it off. Now let's move on to testing. So here's a full breakdown of our test system. One of the biggest things with the RTX 50 series cards is going to be DLSS 4 and more specifically multi-frame generation. So up on the screen, this is how DLSS 3 used to work. You would render a frame and then it would generate a frame, and essentially you would double your frame rate. Now with DLSS 4 and multi-frame generation, you render a frame and then it's going to generate up to 3 frames. So that's going to scale exponentially. Now to test this, we use the DLSS feature test built into 3D Mark. And if we look at it, we actually, with DLSS off, it scores 44.75 FPS, but we turn DLSS on, this would be just one frame generated or 2x, and we get 170.70 FPS. So essentially, we get some pretty good performance, but then when you generate that second frame, it goes up to 232.64 FPS. And if we generate that third frame, it goes up to 283.74 FPS. So you can see how that scales. We also tested this in Cyberpunk 2077. And again, you can see up on the screen here at 2x, at 3x, and 4x, how it all scales. So if your new title or a title that you're playing supports DLSS 4, you can enable it and exponentially increase your frame rate. So as we come to the end here, I have to say that this is such an excellent graphics card. It is essentially the Strix of the last generation, but even taken to a higher level. They've added a lot more things here, which I absolutely love to see. Now, in general, I've already talked about the performance of the RTX 5080 and how it is sort of a letdown because it's not as, powerful in raw performance as an RTX 4090. So we've already talked about that in our last RTX 5080 video, but this card specifically is going to be one of the highest clocked RTX 5080s. So that is going to give you a little bit more performance. It also has that higher power limit. And with that higher power limit that most of the other cards don't have, you still get excellent cooling here. So you have this massive cooling solution. You have all 4 fans on this, so the addition of the 4th fan is something new that we haven't seen from ASUS, and you're getting that here as well. So I love that. The high quality of this card, like you pick this up and it is so heavy. I was actually doing the B-roll for this video and it was like hurting my muscles because I was picking it up. That's how heavy this card is. The actual shroud is going to be all metal, and that's milled out of a single piece of metal. So it's not like pieces put together. It's, it's a single one piece that's been milled out. Just the quality that you're getting here is something you don't see from other manufacturers, and that's why this card has such a premium on it. Some of the other features, again, if you're going to be spending the money on an RTX 5080, especially this card in general, you don't want to have, 12VH PWR power connection issues, whether it's melting or overheating or anything like that. They've put that extra thermal pad on the 12VH PWR, which is great. On top of that, with their GPU Tweak software, you can go ahead and monitor each pin in here, seeing how much power is coming in, if there's any anomalies there. On top of that, you have a total of 5 temperature sensors on the card itself, meaning that you can, measure the GPU temperature, your VRM temperatures, your memory temperatures. You have everything. It can be monitored really, really easily. The sleek design of this, I absolutely love. The RGB lighting is what I like. It's not overdone. Obviously, if you want more RGB lighting, you would go for something like a Strix card. But this card, I think, is the best RTX 5080 out there. It just is. The quality, everything that you get. I didn't even mention half of the other features. You do have your 2 fan connectors here, so you can connect fans, so they have the same curve accounting for the GPU temperature as well as CPU temperature. The PCB coating, so this thing's gonna last like forever. You don't have to worry about any of that. Even the matte coating that you're gonna have on the actual heatsink is great. Like, there's just so much. The extra HDMI, which at least most of the cards is one of the few cards that has the extra HDMI if you do want it. Like, everything, you're getting everything with this card. There's nothing that ASUS really left out with this card, but at the end of the day, it is a $649 premium over the MSRP of the RTX 5080. Now, that's not necessarily ASUS's fault completely. MSRP is, we've talked about this and we can have a whole discussion over NVIDIA's set MSRP, but you are going to pay a premium for this card. That's just what it is. Now, again, you have to think about how far that extra money can go in other parts. And I always say this, if you're just looking for a card, you just want a 5080 and you'd rather spend that extra money on a more powerful processor, or even going from like, you know, a normal processor to like an X3D part on the AMD side or something like that, or getting faster memory, more memory, you know, that $649 can go a lot really far. So that's definitely something to think about. But I think at the end of the day, this is a statement piece from ASUS. It is going to cost a lot, but in my opinion, it is the best RTX 5080 out there. That's just what it is. So if you are looking for an RTX 5080, you want the top of the line card, this is definitely going to be it, and you will not be disappointed. And again, you do get that peace of mind with the extra thermal pad and everything else that I talked about. So you aren't going to be disappointed if you get this card. Now, if you do have any questions about this card specifically, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy this video, I would appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up, and we'll see you guys in the next video.